hello, first grade friends, and welcome back to Library Class at Home with Mr. S. If you remember, on Friday, I read Stuart Little all week long, but on Friday, my camera ran out of space a little bit towards the end. So I'm going to be picking up with the last few pages of Chapter 6, and today we are going to read Chapter 7. If you remember, previous to this, we read The Mouse and the Motorcycle, which was also another story about a mouse. And this is Stuart Little, and in this story, we met Stuart and his family, and he lives with a cat, and the cat really doesn't like him so much. In some of the past chapters, the cat trapped him in a window shade, and all kinds of craziness was going on. And the family was worried that he fell into a mouse hole, because even though he's a mouse, they treat him like he's one of the family, like a regular person. So we're going to read the end of Chapter 6. Chapter 6 was called A Fair Breeze, and if you remember, he was about to sail a sailing ship in the park. So, aye, said Stuart, swinging himself aboard the schooner and taking his place at the wheel. Ready about. One moment, said the man. Do you mind telling me how you propose to beat the other boat? I intend to crack on more sail, said Stuart. Not in my boat, thank you, replied the man quickly. I don't want you capsizing in a storm. Well then, said Stuart, I'll catch the sloop broad on and rake her with fire from my forward cannon. Foul means, said the man. I want this to be a boat race, not a naval engagement. Well then, said Stuart cheerfully, I'll sail the Wasp straight and true, and let the Lillian B. Wormwrath go yawling all over the pond. Bravo, said the man, and good luck go with you. And saying so, he let go of the Wasp's prow. A puff of air bellied out the schooner's head sails, and she paid off and filed away on the port tack, heeling gracefully over the breeze, while Stuart twirled her wheel and braced himself against a deck cleat. By the by, yelled the man, you haven't told me your name. My name is Stuart Little, said Stuart from the top of his lungs. I'm the second son of Frederick C. Little of this city. Well, bon voyage, Stuart, hollered his friend. Take care of yourself and bring the Wasp home safe. That I will, shouted Stuart, and he was so proud and happy he let go of the wheel for a second and did a little dance on the sloping deck, never noticing how narrowly he escaped hitting a steamer that was drifting in his path, with her engines disabled and her decks awash. Oh boy. Well, that was the end of Chapter 6. Chapter 7 is called The Sailboat Race. So here we go. When the people in Central Park learned that one of the toy sailboats was being steered by a mouse in a sailor's suit, they all came running. Soon the shores of the pond were so crowded that a policeman was sent from headquarters to announce that everyone would have to stop pushing. But nobody did. People in New York City like to push each other. The most excited person of all was the boy who owned the Lillian B. Wormwrath. He was a fat, sulky boy of 12 named Leroy. He wore a beige suit and a white necktie stained with orange juice. Come back here, he called to Stuart. Come back here and get on my boat. I want you to steer my boat. I will pay you $5 a week, and you can have every Thursday afternoon off and a radio in your room. Thank you for your kind offer, replied Stuart, but I am happy aboard the Wasp, happier than I have ever been in all my life. And with that, he spun the wheel over smartly and headed his schooner down toward the starting line, where Leroy was turning his boat around and poking it with a long stick, ready for the start of the race. I'll be a referee, said the man in a bright green suit. Is the Wasp ready? Ready, sir, shouted Stuart, touching his hat. Is the Lillian B. Wormwrath ready? Asked the referee. Sure, I'm ready, said Leroy. To the north end of the pond and back again, shouted the referee. On your mark, get set, go! Go, cried the people along the shore. Go, cried the owner of the Wasp. Go, yelled the policeman. And away went the two boats for the north end of the pond, while the seagulls wheeled and cried overhead, and taxicabs tooted and honked from 72nd Street, and the west wind, which had come halfway across America to get to Central Park, sang and whistled in the rigging, and blew spray across the decks, stinging Stuart's cheeks with tiny fragments of flying peanut shells tossed up from the foamy deep. "Ah, this is the life for me," Stuart muttered to himself. "What a ship! What a day! What a race!" Before the two boats had gone many feet, however, an accident happened on shore. The people were pushing each other harder and harder in their eagerness to see the racing boats. Although they really didn't mean to, they pushed the policeman so hard, they pushed him right off the concrete wall and into the pond. He hit the water in a sitting position and got wet clear up to the third button of his jacket. He was soaked. This particular policeman was not only a big, heavy man, but he had just eaten a big, heavy meal, and the wave he made went curling outward, cresting and billowing and upsetting all manner of small craft, and causing every owner of a boat on the pond to scream with delight and consternation. When Stuart saw the great wave approaching, he jumped for the rigging, but he was too late. Towering above the Wasp like a mountain, the wave came crashing and piling along the deck, caught Stuart up and swept him over the side and into the water, where everybody supposed he would drown. Now Stuart had no intention of drowning. He kicked hard with his feet and thrashed hard with his tail, and in a minute or two he climbed back aboard the schooner, cold and wet, but quite unharmed. As he took his place at the helm, he could hear people cheering for him and calling, "Atta mouse, Stuart! Atta mouse!" He looked over and saw that the wave had capsized the Lillian B. Womrath, but she had righted herself and was sailing on her course close by. As she stayed close alongside till both boats reached the north end of the pond. Here Stuart pulled the Wasp about, and Leroy turned the Lillian around with his stick, and away the two boats went for the finish line. This race isn't over yet, thought Stuart. The first warning he had that there was trouble ahead came when he glanced into the Wasp's cabin and observed that the barometer had fallen sharply. That can mean only one thing at sea: dirty weather. Suddenly a dark cloud swept across the sun, blotting it out and leaving the earth in shadow. Stuart shivered in his wet clothes. He turned up his sailor's blouse closer around his neck, and when he spied the Wasp's owner among the crowd on shore, he waved his little hat and called out, "Dirty weather ahead, sir! Wind backing into the southwest! Seas confused! Glass falling!" "Never mind the weather," called the owner. "Watch out for the flotsam dead ahead." Stuart peered ahead into the gathering storm, but saw nothing except gray waves with white crests. The world seemed cold and ominous. Stuart glanced behind him. There came along the sloop, boiling along fast, rolling up a bow wave and gaining steadily. "Look out, Stuart! Look out where you're going!" Stuart strained his eyes, and suddenly, dead ahead, right in the path of the Wasp, he saw an enormous paper bag looming on the surface of the pond. The bag was empty and riding high, its open end gaping wide like the mouth of a cave. Stuart spun the wheel over, but it was too late. The Wasp drove her bow straight into the bag. With a fearful whoosh, the schooner slowed down and came up into the wind with all its sails flapping. Just at this moment, Stuart heard a splintering crash and saw the bow of the Lillian plow through his rigging, and felt the whole ship tremble from stern to stern with the force of the collision. "A collision!" shouted the crowd on shore. In a jiffy, the two boats were in a terrible tangle. Little boys on the shore screamed and danced up and down. Meanwhile, the paper bag sprang a leak and began to fill. The Wasp couldn't move fast because of the bag. The Lillian B. Womrath couldn't move because her nose was stuck in the Wasp's rigging. Waving his arms, Stuart ran forward and fired off the cannon. Then he heard, above the other voices on the shore, the voice of the owner of the Wasp yelling directions and telling him what to do. "Stuart, Stuart, down the jib, down the staysail!" Stuart jumped forth for the halyards and the jib and the foresail and came ripping down. "Cut away the paper bag!" roared the owner. Stuart whipped out his pocket knife and slashed away bravely at the soggy bag until the deck cleared. "Now back your foresail and give her a full!" screamed the owner of the Wasp. Stuart grabbed the foresail boom and pulled with all his might. Slowly the schooner paid off and began to gather headway. And as she heeled over to the breeze and rolled her rail out from under the Lillian's nose, she shook herself free and stood away to the southward. A loud cheer went up from the bank. Stuart sprang to the wheel and answered it. Then he looked back, and to his great joy saw that the Lillian had gone off in a wild direction and was yawning all over the pond. Straight and true sailed the Wasp, with Stuart at the helm. After she had crossed the finish line, Stuart brought her alongside the wall and was taken ashore and highly praised for his fine sailorship and daring. The owner was delighted and said it was the happiest day of his life. He introduced himself to Stuart, and that in his private life he was Dr. Paul Carey, a surgeon-dentist. He said model boats were his hobby, and that he would be delighted to have Stuart take command of his vessel any time. Everybody shook hands with Stuart, everybody that is, except the policeman, who was too wet and too mad to shake hands with a mouse. When Stuart got home that night, his brother George asked him where he had been all day. "Oh, just knocking around town," said Stuart. And that was the end of chapter 7. How exciting, right? He was in a boat race. His boat almost sank, but he beat that nasty little boy in his boat. And the owner of the Wasp was so very happy, he said to Stuart, "You can come sail my boat anytime you want." Well, chapter 8 is called Margallo. Whatever that means. We're going to find that out next time, tomorrow. So check back in. I hope you enjoyed the end of chapter 6 and chapter 7. Don't forget to click the turned in button on my Google Classroom page so that I know you guys saw this video, and check back tomorrow. I hope everyone had a nice weekend, and I hope everybody is staying safe at home. And that's it. I'll see you guys tomorrow, boys and girls.